Hey, practice owners. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're back for episode 2 of our masterclass based on Gary Kadi's bestseller, Million Dollar Dentistry. Gary, I think chapter 1 went pretty well.
Oh my gosh, Steve. I had a lot of fun with you. And how I know people really enjoyed it is I had so much feedback. I got a chance to meet with a handful of people. It was really fantastic to hear the feedback and collaborate with people and get them solutions. It was great, Steve.
Well, we also had, and I want to remind our listeners and viewers, if you're watching this on YouTube, put your questions in. We're going to take questions from the audience as we chat. I'm going to kind of filter them. Usually what happens is we'll get a lot of questions. They kind of, I say they fall into buckets. So I might get 20 questions, but they really fall into 3 buckets. We will answer them as we kind of find a break or as they're relevant. But Gary has also agreed, no matter, the questions get saved. So if you don't get your question answered live in this episode, in this broadcast, don't worry. It is saved, and they NextLevel and Gary promise to answer any questions you have, no matter what it is. If it's about, can I do this in Canada, or if it's something very specific about something we've covered, ask your questions. There's no dumb question. Ask them, and they will either be answered here or they'll go into a queue, and they'll make sure they get them answered by probably at least tomorrow, right, Gary?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Yep. So let's do this. Let's jump right in. Episode 2, Million Dollar Dentistry, my favorite book. By the way, I have the new edition too.
All right, good. I was like, I needed to get us into 2021, Steve.
Yeah, I like using the old one. This one came back. This is like going back in time. The inside's the same, but the cover's cool. Chapter 2, number 2 is The Life You're Entitled to Lead.
Yep.
And in reading that, going through that, building on sort of chapter 1, the life of Larry DDS, very typical dentist, very typical struggles, which you got in dental school, which you didn't get in dental school. This really sort of transitions to maybe not the nuts and bolts. And, you and I have talked many, many times about docs go to dental school to be a clinician, and then they come out and they're running a business, and there's all kinds of fuzzy, there's not a here's how we do it. It's sort of this way works and that way works. Which one's best for you? And that's hard for them to get their mind around. But fundamentally, what's not hard to get their mind around is the life they're entitled to lead. And you've said it before a million times, there are docs who struggle every day, struggle for an entire career, and there are docs who don't. And the question is, what makes the difference? So I think if we kick it off, what do you mean by the life chapter 2, the life you're entitled to lead? What's that mean even?
Well, it sounds so simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's so profound for the doctors that I get a chance to meet with. And what I mean by that is, one of the first things we do, Steve, when we sit down is like, I ask them, what is it that you truly want? And I'm not kidding you. And it's awesome. 99% of the doctors cannot really give me a specific, measurable, clear picture of that. They know they want more money. They know they want more time. They know they want less stress, but like, it's very like nebulous out there. And I like to really get in there with them and really get this defined. And it's usually, I watch their shoulders come down and they get this sense of freedom that they said like they might have never gotten in their whole career. It's amazing.
So you say they're entitled to, and I'm going to give a short list here, you can add to it: financial success, fewer hours at work, or I think what you're probably going to say is you decide how much you want to work, happier in your job, happier in your practice, workplace harmony, which is always a hot topic, team issues. And I see some questions starting to pop in here. So, and a few of them are about teams. So we'll get to those here in a second. Improve your home life and build a secure retirement. And those are all things you're entitled to. So how, as a practice owner, why is it you're entitled to that? And I'm going to segue into another of your books. I don't know if you have one. We had talked about it, but your healthy deserve level. So you're kind of an expert on what you deserve and what you're entitled to, and sort of this idea behind this concept.
This is book 2. Million Dollar Dentistry is book 1. It's a little segue. I actually had a get my team to send me books. So you'll get them in a nice package. I have 8 books now that I've written, which is amazing. But the second book is really, I wrote after I noticed what was happening. And what was happening, Steve, was we would grow practices. We would give doctors more time, more vacation, beyond what they could ever dream of. And you know what they did with it? They killed it off.
Right.
They
Yeah.
killed it off. They couldn't have it. They couldn't be with it. So I want to deepen this raise your healthy deserve level entitled thing. Most people think it's greed or not being a jerk or taking too much of what you can't have. What this is about, Steve, is really allowing and teaching our doctors that they truly can have time. They can truly have money. One of the things that is really interesting to doctors when we first start out with them is, you ever notice that your expenses rise to meet your new levels of income and you end up
Mm-hmm.
not having any more dollars?
Mm-hmm.
Or, you fill time to meet the deadline. And what's happening, Steve, is this is the law of the universe. And that what happens is only 4% of doctors retire financially free at the end of their
Right.
career. And that's unacceptable to
Yep.
me. And so there's phenomenons that they train the doctor to be a great clinician, but they did not train them to be a person who can run a business, have money, have time, and have the work-life integration, if you will. We don't like saying balance, because like work and life should be
Right.
integrated in a way where you're free at wherever you are, whether you're working or you're playing.
That's a good, so there's a good point. Okay. This just popped in here. It says, I feel like dental school drilled into me that if I focus on all, and I'm going to just say those things you just mentioned, I focus on those things, I'm putting money ahead of my patients.
Yeah.
And the question is, how do I change that feeling or feeling that way?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we bump into this all the time. See, most dentists are go to dental school, like I said, to be a clinician,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not trained to be a leader, a banker, a manager of people, and really a retainer of income. How do you do that? And a lot of our doctors think that they need to be a starving artist, and a
Right.
starving artist, which is like, if I do this, then I can have that. They live in an or world, like I can be a kind caregiver, which every dentist is, or I can be a thief and take money and be greedy.
Mm-hmm.
And we help them see this is a turning point for a lot of dentists. It's and not or, Steve. You can be a great clinician, you can provide massive value, and you can have time and money simultaneously. And when you
Right.
change your or to an and, that little tweak, all of a sudden you catch yourself and you catch yourself. And we train doctors on how to operate like this. And we get underneath why they can't receive or why they self sabotage. And when you do that, it's magical, because now all of a sudden there's a wide open path to actually have the natural universe be at play, which is I provide value, you provide an exchange for me, which is money. And then when you run a business, you set it up so it has the time and money work for you as a dentist.
Yeah. And, being business school graduate from Indiana University, go Hoosiers, um, you don't even think about that.
Mm-mm.
And it's not about being greedy. And again, we're all about profit here at the Profitable Dentist. It's practically our name. And I've always been surprised at, you and I've been at a lot of things where dentists feel guilty almost
Oh yeah.
if they're profitable.
Yeah.
And so when I speak, I always say, here's what you need to understand. Profit is simply the measure of how successful you are as a practice owner. Doesn't have anything to do with being a dentist. If you're
Yeah.
in a candy store, if you were a plumber, profit means I spent X dollars and I brought in X plus whatever, and what's left over is profit. And if I do really good at managing the costs, the money I put in, and really good at managing my customers who keep paying me, then I have more profit. Doesn't mean I'm greedy and I took money for stuff I'm not doing or I'm scamming them. It just
Mhm.
means I'm really good at what I do.
Yep.
And there's a guilt. When you were saying that, Gary, what popped in my head was I know one of your clients, and it's probably okay to mention him, Josh Merrill, Dr.
Oh
Merrill.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And you and I visited his practice in New London, Ohio. that where I think, what do we figure? There are more cows than people in New London, Ohio. And what was interesting is Josh is a good guy.
Mm,
He's mid 30s, maybe late 30s.
early
And
40s. He looks good. He's early 40s.
is
Yeah.
he? You
Yeah.
know, he works hard, and he was telling us about his Tesla. And this was maybe a couple of years with you guys that he said, I had an old beat up truck, and that's what I would drive to work. And I always wanted a Tesla, and I felt really bad about buying one. He said, then I bought one. And
Yep.
then I felt really bad about driving it, and I never drove it to work. And he goes, and then one day I drove it to the office, and he said he was always worried about somebody seeing him go down the street and say, oh my gosh, I just bought my dentist a new Tesla. And I
Exactly.
said, my guess is what they said was, my dentist's pretty awesome. He can afford a new Tesla. He must be doing something right. And that's a
Exactly.
mindset that just doesn't exist in the dental world, right?
No, and 90% of dentists grapple with this. So I
Yeah.
learned very early, and that's why it's the second chapter, that we have to teach them how to have and receive. My premise in Raise Your Healthy Deserve Level, Steve, is this. In life and in practice, you don't get what you deserve. You get what you think you deserve, nothing more or nothing less. If you don't think you can have it, you're not going to actually take the actions to create it. And this is where this shows up, Steve. Let me show you the symptoms of where this shows up.
Mm-hmm.
Giving away dentistry and not charging for it. And I'm not saying that there shouldn't be days where you have free dentistry days, but I'm talking about the guilt of not being able to receive money
Mm-hmm.
for a service gladly rendered in value creation. High accounts receivable. You produce the dollars and you can't receive it. It shows up in having a team that is low deserve, meaning because you don't think you deserve to have a good team, you end up with a team of people that are B or C players, not A players. And it's a mindset, your facility, if you will, your facility's a wreck. And that's like, look at your desk. Here's a great barometer, Steve. If your desk is a mess, usually your mind's a mess. And here's
Mm-hmm.
what we know. Self-worth equals net worth. The work we do is we do work with the doctor to get them connected to their purpose, why they do what they do. And when our doctors get connected to their purpose and they understand their why and the value that they're providing, and we help them raise their deserve level and their entitlement, then we just have to go to work. See, their mind's not in the way of creating this ideal scenario of money, time, experience, balance of integration. All those elements get created by
Mm-hmm.
shifting. And this is not woo-woo stuff, Steve. This is not like Gary's
Yeah.
going to do kumbaya with the doctors. It's a step-by-step process, Steve, to actually, we know that this is underneath. And once we do it, when you know better, you do better. And we begin the education process of raising your healthy deserve level so that you can receive the magic of being a dentist and having it all.
So we got a question, but before that, I just wanted to say that really is sort of that entitlement isn't something I'm entitled to just because I exist.
Mhm.
We talked before. I have 5 kids. They're all older now, but trust me, I'm gonna make a note. My next book is going to be on entitlement, and I love them all. But unfortunately, they're all in their early 20s. They've kind of grown out of it. But it's just this idea of you went to dental school. There's some value to it, I guess. When you were talking, what I hear docs do is they do give away dentistry. They don't realize they went to dental school. They passed an exam. They made a huge investment. They've got an office. They've got staff. They do all these things. They deserve to be paid for that. Just like if I was a plumber and I came in and fixed your plumbing, you could try it. You don't want me to try it, but I could try it and save a bunch of money. But am I really? So it's just that idea of understanding you're there and you have that interaction just because the fact that you went to dental school, you're good, your dentistry, and sort of I guess that's your healthy deserve. I'm
Yeah.
here for a reason. I'm not taking advantage of you. I
Mhm.
am doing what I was trained to do, and here's what I should be paid for that.
Absolutely, Steve. And it's really interesting because running a practice, so often dentists that when I first start working with them, they have this philosophical upset that is, I have great hands. I'm a great dentist. Why don't I have money? Why don't I have time? It's because you're great at dentistry. And there's an orchestration of 18 components of running a business that if you don't understand and have them all systematized and organized, even I had a guy, Steve, from our last episode who called and met with me. He was a dentist and an MBA. And he's like, Gary, I know dentistry and I know business and it doesn't
Right.
translate. I
Right.
can't get it done. And that's the difference. You know, if you're not a master at implementation and if you know, I always say like, I do a lot of things in my head. I can be really smart, but like, I'll give you an example. Like I work out in my head, Steve. I don't
Hmm.
get a better body. It doesn't translate into a six pack. I'm still 10 pounds overweight, Steve.
If
So
you, Gary, if you and I could make that work, buddy, we wouldn't be here. We'd be on our yacht somewhere.
And so what there's so many dentists who, by the way, these dentists who have been calling in your group,
Uh-huh.
they're sitting on gold mines.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah. Yeah.
sitting on, they have
Yeah.
thousands of patients and they just need to take care of the ones that they have and have them show up and pay. And those simple things turn a good dentist into a profitable dentist. That's the game changer, Steve.
Which are my favorite dentists, Gary. So you said something, and I'm going to flip a page here. You said something about these components, and I got a question here that says, um, and I'm going to put a couple together. It says, all right, if one of them says, if I believe I'm really entitled to all these things, where do I even begin to implement that in my practice? And so in the book, we talk about one is having the income you desire. You can see how I'm a highlighter, Gary.
I love
Um,
it, Steve. You're my
and
kind of guy.
to work as few hours as you like. All those things. Those are things that, and I'm setting you up here if you can feel it coming. You're a master of what you call reverse engineering. That you have to design, you have to envision the practice you want, design around that, and then back into a plan to get you there. So, what are those? You said 18 things. That's what somebody asked. What are those 18 things? What are those 18 things?
Oh, we could sit here forever, Steve, but I'm going to break it down into simple. I'm going to keep these 18 simple. The first thing is
Okay.
if you don't know where and when you're going to land your plane, you're never going to get there. This is why
Mm.
96% of dentists don't retire financially free, meaning they're looking here and they're at, let's say they're 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 or 70. I had a guy call, he's 50 years in practice from our last 50 years. His dad was in, he goes, I got 10 more years because my dad was 60 years. And he's still going and he's fired up. And I was so inspired by this guy, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, look, he goes, I want to end my career on a high note. I said, done, let's do it. I said, what is ending up on a high note? Number one is he goes, I don't even know where to start. So let me give you where to start. What is the number, the dollar number that you want to have? And when we do dollar numbers, Steve, we do it in two. What is the collections number and what is the profitability? So you have to really, and by the way, let's just give the book away because I'm not going to be able to get to all 18 of these in the
Okay.
time we have. So you're going to get a free book here. And then you'll just be able to click the link and you'll be able to read them. I think it's important to read them, but I want to break out the low hanging fruit for everybody on our call today. You know, number one is you got to know where you want to end up. And like, this is why only 4% of dentists retire financially free because they don't start with the end and work backwards. They don't know what trajectory and the arc is that they need to know to go from New York to Indiana. Like if I'm flying too low, I'm not going to get there. If I need to fly higher, if the wind's blowing and we have a pandemic, I got to chart my course again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you've got to know like what it is. We believe that we have our doctors end up 5 million over 5 years. Like that's one of our
Okay.
equations. How do you get 5 million over 5 years? And everybody can do that if you know what the game is. Now, if you're sitting there and you don't think you can have 5 million at the end of your retirement, I'll go to work with you there and teach you how to receive 5 million. Because as a
Mm-hmm.
consultant, I'm not going to dive into the pool, Steve, if I'm trying to if I want that 5 million more than you do, I won't dive into
Yeah.
that pool.
Yeah.
I'll help the doc see it. And that's the difference in our approach. It's the difference between enablement and empowerment. The first thing we do is we decide, are we enabling this and forcing it for the doc, or are they empowered and are they ready to receive it? So number one is can you receive whatever the number is that you want to end up? Then you want to figure out how much time you want to take to work to get that. So a lot of doctors think more working hours. Like when I tell somebody that they can work, if they're working 4 days, they can work 3 days. If they're working, a lot of these doctors are working 50 weeks. I go,
Yeah.
how many, then we get into time. So first is money. How much collections and how much profit? Then we get into time. How many days per week and how many weeks do you want off? Then from there, we reverse engineer that. And then we know how much you need to do per day, per team member. See, this is where turns your payroll into a profit center. Because when you map out what you want to create in time and money as a business owner, and you reverse engineer that and put that over your team, now your team knows how much they need to do each day by their position: treatment coordinator, appointment coordinator, assistant, hygienist. And it just creates a machine that has everything work. And that's 18 packed into 3.
Yeah, and I'm you and I have had this. We've done this course, so to speak, this part of a masterclass many times, and we're very much aligned in that. Dentists, they don't teach you this in dental school.
No.
And I've, as a practice owner, I've had the same conversation. I call the practice manager and say, "Hey, how did we do today?" And I get, "Oh, we did great." Well, great is not a number, because here's what I need. I need $10,200 every day to hit the numbers we want and to back into the lifestyle that, I want, because I own the practice, and, that's why I'm in business. And so I need to know, was it over 10,200 or was it under? And under is fine today. You're always going to have under days, but you can't have all under days. So if we were 7,500 today, that's okay. But tomorrow we need 2,750 on top of our 10-2. So first thing is just that, know exactly where you're going. And in dentistry, that's not really a thing. What I hear is, "Oh, we were busy today. We were covered up. Doc was full."
Yep.
And you find out you billed and collected $1,112. Well, you didn't even pay for the light bill.
Exactly.
And that's a thing. That's a good habit to build. So I got one here that.
Can I add one thing?
Yes, anything.
I want to add one thing here. Very important, because there's a group of doctors right now that we just ran a bunch of numbers. There's a group of doctors going, this sounds great, but it's like, I don't like numbers. I hate numbers. My team hates numbers. So you have to know how to, and we help you get through this. I have a lot of empathy for doctors, because 75% of dentists are methodical thinkers. They want to know the steps, and they're humanists. They care deeply about people. The minute you add numbers, it throws everything off, because they sit there and they try to figure out, like, what if I don't do it? And they have a lot of questions about that. Or they say, you know what, I don't like numbers. I want to do good work for people. I care about my people, and the numbers are going to come. Yes and no. Yes, you do good work, but if you don't know how much, and you're sitting there and you're 50 years old and you have nothing saved, well, at some point you got it. Something has to give. And here's the way we hold numbers. Numbers are the scoreboard for how healthy you're making your patients, the impact you're making on your patients. It reframes it so you can be with numbers. Numbers are a key thing in the process of running a successful business, because it's just like a car. If it's on E, you're not going to be able to go much farther. And this is what we do. We create a simple dashboard that allows you to land your plane where you want it. When I say landing the plane, whatever that number is, and the amount of time that you're spending, and it's broken out. How do you eat an elephant, Steve? One bite at a time. Get to your question, buddy.
Yeah, and I think, back to the first question here, that is, I've said it a million times. You can be a great dentist. In fact, you can be the best dentist in Minnesota and still go bankrupt. But you can't be a profitable dentist and not manage your cost, treat your patients crappy, do bad dentistry. You can do one, but you can't do the other. It's funny you said team too, because I got about 4 questions all at once when you said that. And again, if you're listening, put your questions in. There's nothing, out of bounds. It says, this is a one we always get. My problem has always been my team. They drive me crazy. How do I get them to just do what I tell them? So
Yeah.
I think I know what your answer is, but it's funny how
So,
there's a theme to this, isn't it? I
oh
mean,
yeah.
it's
Oh yeah.
so how do I get them to just do what I tell them?
Yeah, I mean, I became an alcoholic because people didn't do what I wanted them to do when I wanted them to
Right.
do it, Steve. I'm
Right.
13 years sober because I'm like, I got to find a better way. So I'm gonna help everybody here with team, because if it wasn't for people, we would be fine, right? Everything would be fine.
Hmm.
So how do you do this? Well, first you have to know that you deserve to have a world-class team, an A playing team. That's the beginning. If you don't think you deserve that, you're going to be bumping into a high maintenance team rather than a high performance team. You want to get out of being a high maintenance team and get into a high performance team that are aligned with your values. One of the things that we do is we define what your vision, purpose, and values are. What are you committed to? What does your practice look like? A lot of times it's in our doctors' heads, and once we get it out and we let the team know what it looks like, they can start operating inside of that, right?
Hmm.
That's number one. The other thing is you have to create leaders among leaders. This is a very important aspect, Steve, because if you find yourself carrying the team up the hill all day, every day, and you're like an octopus, you have to like micromanage every little conversation. Like you're sitting there chairside. I always love this one. I'm chairside, and I can hear my front office gal going, answering the phone, and they're canceling and all that. And it's like, we decentralize the doctor. We put
Hmm.
the accountabilities in each position. We define the position, but here's the difference. This is the game changer, Steve. We get people out of operating from activity and being busy to being outcome based. So when they know what their
Hmm.
outcome is, and they know what the purpose of the practice is, and they tie their own personal purpose to the measure, then you have a very self-responsible person. And then guess what, Steve? This puts the icing on the cake. We give them a bonus when they hit their daily number. Now all of a sudden that team member gets a Scooby snack every day, Steve. So now
Right.
you've got a systematic step-by-step process, and it's very easy to implement all this because they want this. Here's the misnomer that a lot of dentists have. The team wants what the dentist wants. The dentist doesn't know how to give it to the team, and that's what my book does, and that's what we do as a
Hmm.
company. We help bridge that gap and get it done. There's some docs that are just going to read the book and they can implement, and they're fantastic. There's some docs that want to read the book, they want to get in communication with me, and then they'll want my team to help them implement. There's all that available to them. Here's the thing: you don't have to do it alone anymore. And by the way, post pandemic, don't try to do it all alone. Just get it done so you can get on with your
Yeah.
business and be a great dentist and have fun doing it.
Well, and that hit the nail right on the head. I think to put a bow on that, most docs. What's always struck me, Gary, is when I have dentists say, "Man, I just, I can't get anything done during the day because everybody's coming to me about every decision."
Mhm,
And what you find is they have created that. What
mhm.
do they say? You get the behavior you tolerate. So if
Yep.
you say, listen, don't make any decision, I make all the financial decisions. I mean, I own several businesses and I'll put a threshold and it might be $500. You guys are in charge. Anything under $500, execute on, and we'll talk about it next week's meeting. Anything under $500, just do it. Do it with, be smart, be ready to answer a question next week when I say, that's interesting. Why'd we do it? And if we spent $500, how is it cutting a cost by $700 or bringing in 1,000? It's not just throwing 500 bucks out the window, but you'll find that they start making the same smart decisions you would without including you. And
Exactly.
that's sort of what you're back to your mindset. Number one, you're entitled to it. You worked hard, you built a practice, you went to dental school, you did all the things, and your team is now should be making the same decisions you make. And that's easy to say. And you do a really good job on it throughout the book and covering how you do that. And again, you could consider this an instruction manual.
Mhm.
You can get this, you can try and do it yourself. But I think the cool thing is in the end, and you've always been generous with information. In the end, somebody can say, they can call NextLevel and say, hey, can Gary help me do this? And, obviously, of course. But even somebody who's trying to do it themselves, I know you've been very generous with helping them, but
Mhm.
it's out of the strike zone of most practice owning dentists who went to dental school and now have to understand all this team stuff. So it's
Mhm.
good to have somebody to help them do that. we have, I noticed, checking on time here. I want to do a couple things. One is you had, I want to just ask you, have anything we might not have covered? We got a ton of questions here. Keep them
Yeah.
coming in. Gary's promised to answer all of them.
Well,
They'll
Jane and
come in an
Jody
email.
are, I'm sorry, Steve. Jane and Jody will make sure all those questions get answered.
Yep.
Also, like, I'm a real advocate for this industry, and I really care deeply about the men and women that go to work and set their practice up, and then they get stuck, because I believe that dentists can change, healthcare, change
Mhm.
communities. And so often they're just bogged down. And my whole purpose is to give freedom and space to dentists to live a full life and have the life they've dreamt of. And so, one of the things that I wanted to offer is that I'll meet with doctors that are really serious. Like, if they, really heard the message today, it resonated in their heart, and they go, look, I'm just sick and tired of being sick and tired of trying to figure all this stuff out. And I just want somebody who's codified it and done it. And I'll meet with them. I'd be happy to meet with them, give them 15 minutes, for your
Okay.
community, and just really, get on my calendar and just get to know them, do a quick Zoom call or a phone call, and, just see if I can make a difference. And that's, I'm happy to do that, Steve.
We'll put a link down below here and how to schedule. I think you use an online scheduler, so it's easy
Yep.
to, so they don't have to, they don't have to randomly pick something and go back and forth. They can click this link, go to your calendar and say, I want 10 o'clock next Tuesday.
Mhm.
And I know that you're like me. I like to have my hands in the business, and especially with customers and clients, and in my case, docs who are struggling. I like to kind of have my ear to the ground and know what's going on with them, and I know you do too. So I appreciate you offering that. And we'll put a link down here. I had down here that they said the first 10 to schedule will meet directly with you. You still cool with that?
I'm good with that. Yeah. Cause
Awesome.
that's the other thing. I get so jacked up about this, if when I get too many, my
Yeah.
team gets mad at me. So yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Well, and it's hard to do. I mean, it becomes, it becomes a bigger call. And there are a lot of, I'm judging from the questions here, there are a lot of people with real struggles right now as we're kind of coming out of COVID and trying to get your practice up and going. So
Yep.
the second thing is, I'm pretty excited. The next episode is CPR, cash in your pocket right now. I love the titles to these. The other thing
Thanks.
is, I love that it's relevant. When did you do this? 2006?
Six,
It,
six,
the same
14 years
stuff
ago, 15 years
applies.
ago. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's the same stuff
Beatles,
today.
it's the Beatles, it's Zeppelin, it's like relevant,
Yeah.
Fleetwood Mac, it's all right there. Because here's the reason why, Stephen, I'll leave you with this. It's the fundamentals of business and the
Mhm.
fundamentals of human interaction and motivation. Very simple. Very simple. Universal principles that are around forever. And that's why you have the first edition, I have the seventh edition. This
Mhm.
is relevant. I take BlackBerry out and
Yeah.
make it an iPhone. I make sure that it's relevant to today's world. So just to
Mhm.
give you an example, we updated 7 times. So yeah.
So wait a minute. The part about make sure your beeper is always on, that doesn't work anymore.
Steve,
Darn it.
your 8 track, turn in your
Right.
8 track.
Play an
Yeah.
8 track for the patients. They'll love it.
Or your yellow pages, stop running your
Yes.
yellow pages ad. Yes,
Make
all
sure you spend 30 grand on the back cover of the yellow pages.
exactly.
Um, yeah, and it's funny you say that because my about a year ago we were talking to my kids. They literally, and they're 21 to 25. They literally have never seen Yellow Pages. They don't even know what we were talking about.
I love antiquated things. It's great. It's great.
Well, Gary, I appreciate you doing this again with us. Episode 2. Episode number 3 is cash in your pocket right now. If you haven't, you can. If you're registered, you'll get a notice that says, "Here's when number 3 is coming out." And we want people to. You can watch them all. You can watch one. There's going to be 2 links below. One is to get the book. So click that. Gary will send you that, and you'll get the other 17 things to do, other 17 components of a well-oiled practice. And then the other one is for the first 10 people who want to schedule, click a schedule, no obligation, no nothing, just chat with Gary and ask all the questions you want. And again, Gary's always generous with his time. So with that, Gary, I appreciate you're in New York right now,
I am. We just had,
Rockefeller Center.
yeah, it was crazy. We're in New York is a crazy time. So
Yeah,
I'm glad to be here, and I'm definitely looking forward to the warm weather coming up.
good deal.
All right,
So
buddy.
practice owners, thanks for listening in. And until next time, Steve Parker, Gary Kadi, and $1 Million Dentistry. Click below, get the book, and schedule a few minutes with Gary. So see you next time.